what happened is that this pumping station was providing most of Wantage's water, a lot of Wantage's water, and our water. But because of all the development, it wasn't enough water for the future. So they're building a pipe. They're putting it in now all the way from Wantage, Larks Hill, through the fields for 6 kilometers to that spot. So they're going to run the water through gravity to that spot and then pump it up to the top of that hill to a reservoir. And so in order to build this pipe, they have to dig up the ground, obviously, for 6 kilometers. And they precede that with an archaeological study in case they're going through something that's going to be archaeologically valuable. They don't want to destroy it, which is very good of them, basically. Yeah. So from starting September, they started an archaeological excavation, and they dug up a strip about 10 meters wide all the way from Wantage to there. And that spot, I brought you here because it's quite easy to see from here, that's the end of it. And at that spot they found an Iron Age settlement. Iron Age means 3,000 years ago. And they found the typical kinds of things you find in an Iron Age settlement. Round foundations of big round sort of rondavels where they lived, pits where they kept their grain and so on, burials as well. And further up that hill, which we'll see when we drive up there, was a Roman settlement. So this is very ancient. And along the way from Wantage they found a lot of tools from the Neolithic age, which is 6,000 years ago. So what it means really is that people have been living in this area, particularly, you went over the brook, particularly near the water along the brook, because of course everybody needs water. And this ridgeway was the main highway, it was the M4 of this part of England for 10,000 years. So people used to be walking, travelling along there for 10,000 years. And so these villages right near the ridgeway were very prime places to live because you were close to the road and you had water. And so this area, this whole area, including Wantage, has been inhabited for perhaps 10,000 years, maybe longer. And they found tools and pottery and so on from all that period. But what we're going to look at here is Iron Age, 3,000 years ago, and Roman, which is 1,000 years ago. They dug up, they found, I think, 26 skeletons just along this. And I'm going to try to get all those skeletons reburied in the village, in our village here, because we don't like the idea of them being taken away and, just being put in some industrial grave somewhere, mass grave. And of course we can't put them where they were because that's where the water pipe is going to go. But we're looking for a place, and we're going to talk to Thames Water whether they will pay for this reburial. So we'll have a memorial in Celtic and a memorial in Latin where they're buried. That's the hope. The fact is, most archaeological digs are done in special places. For instance, the White Horse, on the top of the White Horse is Uffington Castle. Yeah. So they've had a lot there. Just above Letcombe Regis, which you can just see from here, is Sexbury Camp, which is Iron Age. Those are both Iron Age. And so archaeologists spent a lot of time up on the top of the ridgeway in these camps, which were really used for refuge in times of danger, because they've got big banks to stop people running up, and for exchange markets for sheep and so on. But they lived down here on the plain near the water, and very few archaeological digs have been done here on the plain where people actually lived for thousands of years. And so this is unique in many respects, and our village and the whole area has been very excited about it. and we're waiting to see now the analysis of what they found, skeletons, the artifacts, little pottery, combs and so on. This will take another year, and then there'll be a report, and we will understand exactly the time they were there, what was going on, why they were buried in some very peculiar ways, and so on. So all of these will perhaps have answers in about a year. So if you like, we'll go up the road and just have a little look at where they've been digging, which is now covered over. Nevertheless, you get a feeling for where these people lived. I think it's quite a nice thing to do. So it's another 5 kilometers of excavation from Wantage before it reaches this final section where they found almost everything of interest in this section here. But 95% of it was found here. Yeah.
So does it mean they've had to halt the works until the skeletons can be relocated?
This finished in end of March. No, end of February. And since then they've been starting to lay the pipe. So they're already laying it along there, and they'll reach the pumping station down there by the end of the year, probably. You can see actually they are one of the things they're doing is going under the Letcombe Brook, which is a very unique brook in that it's a chalk stream, and it's considered highly vulnerable to damage, and so they're going 40 meters where you can see that crane, 40 meters under the brook which runs there. So they're going very deep there. They've got an automatic little what would you call it, a sort of mole that goes right under and comes up. No people have to do it. Then they pull through the pipe and so on, and you can see them working on it over there. In the beginning we didn't know what they were doing, and I walked up to them and said, what are all these people doing in orange sort of jumpsuits? Oh, we're doing the archaeology. And that's when my interest and the village's interest really became apparent. They had pretty strict instructions to stick to the pipe. So they didn't want the archaeologists going off to the side and wasting, money, obviously, and time, because their job is simply to go where the pipe is. And they started off by doing a geophysical examination of the whole length, using drones and so on, to try and see where the earth had been disturbed along the way. And that gives them an idea of where archaeological finds might be looked for. And they generally then would go in where the geophysical survey showed possibilities and do some digging there. They only went down 18 inches. And very often they found nothing. But they discovered in this area that although the pipe is just below there, that this area on the left showed a lot of geophysical differentiations and so on, which indicated that there was something quite a lot of archaeological stuff going on. And so what happened is, right here on the left, which is now covered with bricks, but before they did a lot of digging here for a couple of months, and this is where they found the Roman settlement. The Roman settlement is right here, and these are the pipes, by the way, that are being put in, obviously.
So how many bodies did they find here?
They found, interestingly enough, right up by the road there, they found, I think it was 6 bodies in shallow graves, only a foot down. And they concluded that these were probably slaves because they didn't give them the full treatment. But then further down, and I'll show you where, they found another 18 skeletons which were dug into this hard chalk, so it was a great deal of work. So those were no doubt not slaves, they were Romans. So we had them there, we had the other burials, and in the middle here we had the sort of foundations that were left from little houses, grain stores and so on, the sort of pits, the sort of typical thing that a Roman settlement would have. Now, some people think that actually they would be more likely to have buried their people here and maybe had some outhouses, but that the main habitation area would be the village, which is down there, because this is a bit far from the water. You know, water was the essential thing in those days. Well, it still is. But anyhow, this was the site of the Roman settlement, and I'll show you a little bit later down there where those graves were. The posts there are the precise point. So I think there was some discussion that they would try to avoid where the main graves were, which are straight ahead of us, in order as a mark of respect. So they're going along the edge here. The blue. This is where they found the 16 Roman graves that were dug very deep into this very hard chalk. And I actually came here before they'd filled it in, because it was very dangerous with children and dogs and so on. So they were very impressive. They were hacked out of this very hard chalk, nearly 6 foot deep, 6 foot long, and they found, you know, lots of skeletons, as I said, some with their heads removed after death, some with coins in their mouths and so on. So this was a prime area for Roman burials. And the number involved means that probably this settlement was here for maybe 200 or 300 years. You know, a lot of people were here. We're talking about the Romans, I think, arrived around about 100 and stayed till about 400 AD. So the analysis they're doing now will try to determine exactly when it was. You know, was it around nearer 100 or nearer 400 AD that they lived in? The sort of chalk hill they had at Avebury and other places, which was made out of chalk, so they were white. These wonderful white beacons. There's another one over there. Do you see that? Over there? Yeah. One there, one there. And they would love to get their hands on it and see whether it was just chalk or whether, as in Avebury, there's something underneath all that. But unfortunately, that takes money. Try and get permission from the landowner for us, local volunteers, to take a metre by a metre and try and dig down a few metres and see.
So this was Roman then, not Iron Age?
This is Roman.
This is Roman.
Yeah. Along the way here, they did find tools and so on from the Neolithic age, it went Neolithic, bronze, iron. Iron was about 1000 BC, and then you had the Bronze Age, Iron Age. Before the Bronze Age was the Neolithic, which I think finished around 2000 BC, about 4,000 years ago. Okay, so we've got, now that's an interesting little thing. That is probably a post hole. Doesn't look like much, but that's a Roman post hole. A post means they put wooden posts in for some sort of structure. Could have been a home, could have been storing grain or something like that. You'll see further down the Iron Age post hole.
So they can tell how old a hole is. That's quite impressive.
Well, I think they also, from the shape of, you know, they've dug up a lot of Iron Age stuff. They know what the post holes look like and how they're arranged and so on. And there are still some there. I hope they haven't got rid of them. But this is quite a nice spot to have a dwelling, isn't it? Very dramatic.
So as you say, the Ridgeway here was the kind of thoroughfare.
Oh yes, the Ridgeway was the thoroughfare of southern England. It goes from around Avebury all the way up to close to Milton Keynes. It's about 100 miles long.
And it was safe to live below, because weren't kind of bandits and stuff more likely to attack you from above? Was it?
Well, I imagine that that security was always an issue, and that's, I believe, why they had these camps spread along, like Salisbury. Salisbury camp is right over there. That just on the left, you see that big bunch of trees. That's Salisbury camp, Iron Age again, 3,000 years ago. And then the next one is the White Horse, Uffington Castle, which is about a mile along the top of that. And they would be places of refuge. If you saw trouble around, you would go there and bring all your stuff and your people and fend it off and then come back to your houses. I presume that's what happened. But they didn't live up there. They didn't. They lived down here. There's another one here. So you can see there's a sort of a circular effect of this. So this would have been a dwelling 3,000 years ago. This could have been one of the graves where there was a woman found buried like this on her back with her legs open, and very shocking actually. Her hands had been cut off. Sorry, her feet had been cut off and put under her right arm as she lay there. It's all very mysterious. They don't know whether it was a custom of this area or whether she had been... and actually underneath her, underneath the soil underneath, they found a little child, a skeleton of a child. So the whole thing is mysterious. Perhaps they will come up with an answer after they've analysed it. But I think this was one of the places where they found a skeleton. It might have been that poor woman. So actually they're going up there, they're not going along there. You see the next marker is there, the next blue marker. Yeah, so that's why we can't rebury the bodies where they were, because this 30-ton machine is going to go right through this like butter. That's Letcombe Bassett, which is at the source of the Letcombe Brook. The spring is just in the middle of the village. So it's been a place that, favoured place to live for thousands of years.
So between the stream and the ridgeway?
Yeah. And in fact, I remember reading King Alfred's will. He left his kingdom to his sons and so on, but he left his Wantage farm, because he was born in Wantage, to his wife. Rather like Shakespeare leaving his second bed to his wife, not his first. But I've often thought that his farm would have incorporated the head of the stream, because he was the most important landowner in the area. So I often think that we are here living on King Alfred's farm. It may be fanciful, but I think it's a possibility. And in fact, we knew nothing about our village history until about 1100, when ancient records started detailing who the lord of the manor was and so on. But I think a lot of people, including me, assumed that around about 1100 was when people, not long after King Alfred, started living here. But one of the exciting things about this project was that people have been living here for thousands of years. So it was the discovery of our ancient history that was very exciting for us. One of the benefits of the new water arrangement is that they're not going to take the water from this stream. So it means that the water level of this Letcombe Brook will be higher. It'll have a good supply of water, better than it had before.
Okay.
So that was their selling point, although the real reason, of course, was that they had to get a lot more water to supply Wantage.
So where's the water coming from? That they are going to...
This water that we're going to get will come from the Thames via, I believe, Wallingford and Wantage, and then here. So it's coming 13, 14 miles, which it's a curious irony that people first came to live here because of the water, and now we're going to get our water from 15 miles away. I mean, think of that.
So what's it going to do to the level of the Thames? I wonder.
Oh, the Thames has still got plenty, I think.
Well, the Environment Agency, they recently said that our water's going to run out in, there was some statistic by 2050 or something.
Yes. Well, it'll be the same all over the world, It'll be fighting over water rather than oil, perhaps. The oil will have run out by then. So future generations are going to face some challenges, to be sure.